Hello, I am Marten, and playing indie games is my number one pastime and a way to recharge after spending a long day interacting with people. I have been recording gameplay videos for quite some time now, mostly without any commentary because I don't get much viewers, and without viewers I'm just a random guy who's talking to himself. Anyway, I do make commented gaming videos from time to time, and I haven't made one in a very long time, I think. So I decided to revive my old alternate channel about commented gaming videos. The topic that I've chosen are games that I have played the previous year, only the games that I spent over 10 hours on, and they are all going to be roguelike games. The reason is that roguelikes, modern roguelikes, and especially roguelike deck builders are some of my most favorite games. So those are the kind of games that I would spend a lot of cash even if they are not currently in much of a great sale, because otherwise I'm just chasing the sales. And I'm going to be reviewing them in form of a tier list, going to be grading them according to various tier categories, according to how much I personally like those games. So no, I'm not going to be putting them into the tiers according to how I objectively think they belong, just how they subjectively fit my personal gaming tastes, which I assume is going to be source of a lot of controversy, because when I look at other tier list videos from other people and look at the comments, I can frequently see that a lot of people do not get it and will blame you for not presenting facts to them. But that's just life, and we'll see how it goes. Let's get right into it. The first game that I am going to be talking about in here is Balatro, which is probably the most known roguelike deck building game at the moment. It won a lot of awards and such. And if I were to rank it according to where I think it belongs, as per how well it is for the majority of people, it would have to go to S. But to me, it was a B. B for Balatro. And I'm going to try to explain why. And the main reason is that when I play games, what's really some of the most important thing to me is that they have a beginning, evolve over time, and in a reasonable time they peak and end and provide a satisfying ending followed by credits, and that's it. But as far as Balatro is concerned, it doesn't have a definite ending in the traditional sense of a word, just really the way to unlock new stuff, new challenges, new difficulties, and is more suited, rather than me, it is more suited for either casual players who want to spend a few hours on some game and don't care about what kind of progression are they going to make, or it's for achievement hunters who really want to unlock all the different stuff bit by bit and all the various difficulties, which would take hundreds of hours to do so, which is way too much for my gaming taste. So the only way to really play Balatro to an ending is to really set what you define as an ending, which I tried. I told myself that I am going to do one difficulty, do all the difficulties with one deck, because the unlocking difficulties is separate for each provided deck. There are like tens of them, and I wanted to beat all the difficulties with one deck, but as soon as I got to the highest, I found out that you really have to find a way to break the game in order to beat it. And after a few near wins, I got frustrated and gave up. So a really good game, but well the interactions and gaming mechanics fit well together. It is well thought of, like mechanically very great, but not in terms of general progression, which is why I am putting it to B. The next game that I am going to be talking about is Breach Wanderers. I got it in Steam Spring Sale for I don't know how much. I think it was in a moderate sale of like -30 or -40. And over the next month of getting it, I played it a total of 50 hours, and it was really the only game throughout the entire year that I stayed up late just so that I can have another run. As at the time of speaking, it is my 10th most played game on the Steam ever, so it would be wrong if I put it anywhere else than the S tier. And the reason why I like it so much is that normally in deck builders, in the physical deck builders and in roguelike deck builders as well, you start with a very weak deck of weak cards, then improve the deck, remove some of the weak cards, and then the game starts to get interesting. But Breach Wanderers does it differently, and whereas normally in roguelikes you would find games of cards of different rarities like common, uncommon and rares, in Breach Wanderer already the beginning deck you start with is filled with the common cards you've unlocked, not just the starter cards, and you only add uncommons and rares into the deck as you go. And what this means in terms of gameplay, that it already starts interesting with every run you make. And from the very first encounter, the game is an interesting tactical puzzle about finding out the optimal way to play the cards you've dealt. And as you go through the run, you are not allowed to skip a card draft about adding new cards into your deck, so you do not ever get to peak and making the optimal best deck that you do not have to improve anymore, but you still always add more cards and keep the keep the interactions fresh and interesting. And just because of this game caught me for a very long time. Next is a game called Deck of Souls. It is a roguelike deck builder that tries to combine the standard deck building formula with some Souls-like aesthetics and mechanics, such as the equipment system that is similar to Souls-like games, where you have to decide how much do you wish to fit your weight limit. And the game it was interesting enough for me to reach the definitive ending of the game, which it had, and played over 10 hours, but I do not think it was a good game. I do not think it was a good game because of many reasons, which I have already mentioned in the Steam review that I have made, where I marked the game as not recommended by me, and it has had far too many flaws. One was that the user interface was hostile. The other one was that a lot of the game mechanics were not explained very well. And even after I've completed the game, I still do not understand some of them. And the variety wasn't also very good. You always fought the exact same bosses with no difference whatsoever, and this is unforgivable to me. So good enough for me to finish, good enough for me to play over 10 hours, but that is the only good thing I have to say about the game. The next game on the tier list is Dungeons and Degenerate Gamblers, a game that shares many thematic elements with the game Bellatro, because while in Bellatro you played a card game based on poker that was made into a roguelike deck builder, Dungeons and Degenerate Gamblers is blackjack made into a roguelike deck builder form. And I had a blast with it. I enjoyed it much more than Bellatro, and I think that it was how Bellatro was supposed to be. And the reason is that the progression was much smooth and suited to my taste, because you just had a few possible decks. Some of them were unlockable, and the difficulty ascended in each of them. There weren't as many difficulties in Bellatro, and there was a final epic boss at the end of the last difficulty, which wasn't at all hard to reach, because every time there were a lot of options to get very strong cards in your deck and become really unbeatable. So I think I only played it for a few more hours than 10, and I have unlocked all the decks, beaten the game at least once on the lowest difficulty, and beaten the highest difficulty with one of them, which was a highly satisfying experience. So an A-tier game. The next game is called Holocure Save the Fans. It's not a deck builder, it's the first non-deck builder game in this list, but I played it a lot on Steam Deck, where I play most of my roguelikes. And it is a game which is of the survivors genre, coined by Vampire Survivors, also called as Roguelike Bullet Hell, where you have auto-firing weapons, a top-down look, and try to survive a given time. One of the great aspects of the game is that it is free, and it doesn't really sacrifice the quality of itself by being free, but actually it's got a lot of innovations that push it in a better direction than Vampire Survivors. One of them was that it has a lot of characters, and all of them have a specific signature weapon and a specific cooldown skill that is only available by that character alone. Another great thing that makes it better than Vampire Survivors was that the secondary skills are also very interesting, and it wasn't just like in Vampire Survivors that you have a skill that raises your attack speed by 10%, and when you upgrade it, it raises your attack speed even more. No, all of them had different, more complex effects that feed into your strategy and character builds in different ways. So that already puts the game in higher tiers, but what made it not suitable for the S tier was that the game was hard, really hard, and grindy. Already finishing the levels on the lower difficulty was task for several tens of hours, probably. I'm not sure what is the exact number, because the Steam Deck doesn't count it when I'm offline. And with the harder version of the levels, it was even worse. And it even took a lot of time to buy more meta upgrades to be stronger and have the experience smoother. So it was really good, in many regards, better than Vampire Survivors. Maybe some features were extra and I would have done without them, like there was even some feature where you could decorate your home, and I did not go into it. But it wasn't as casual as Vampire Survivors, it was more of a gamer's game, so an A tier from me. Next is a game called Megabonk, last year's hit for many of players. I caved into the hype and tried it as well during my winter holidays. I was playing it late at night for a few hours, always when I was tired from playing other games and wanted some mindless fun instead. I had kind of a love-hate relationship with it, where I liked a lot of aspect, the casual aspect, and the way you could go different ways in building your character. But I disliked how challenging it was and did not provide much meta upgrades to make the challenge a bit smoother. Also, in terms of game progression, it was more built like Balatro, where the main focus for progression was a lot of different achievements that you can fulfill to unlock new stuff. But even not considering unlocking all the stuff, there were some different tiers for each level. There were three levels, so I thought I could finish them all. I was not too interested about the optional challenges, and I ran into a wall of difficulty where it was really hard to find out the optimal character build to build those levels. I found some broken combinations like the Aegis weapon and Quantity Tome, but otherwise I did not think it was very easy to play, and I did not think it was just a matter of the skill, and you really also had to luck out on finding the optimal items for your character build. And that's kind of why it belongs to C for me. I don't know how else to say it. The next thing I'm going to show you is Monster Train 2, and first thing I should mention that the game was much better than Monster Train 1. And mostly because of how I mentioned the game progression. In Monster Train 1, I was not really interested in ascending the difficulties, just reaching the final boss of the game, and thus the definite ending. And in the original game, it was only a matter of a few hours to do so. There was not really much of a meta game build up to reach that point. But in Monster Train, to beat the three titans, the very final epic definite boss of the game, it was much more difficult and fleshed out experience to reach that point. And even after doing that, the optional in-game challenges were interesting enough for me to do, because they weren't too hard and frustrating as in Balatro, and even the game mechanics make it available to beat any sort of a challenge over multiple tries, because even if it gives you some really tough conditions, you can randomly get into a very good combination of cards or card upgrades or items. Every run is different, and it's just delightful to play. A definite S tier from me, and quality contender to the original Slay the Spire by making its own way through the genre and doing it really well. Next is a game called Pyrene, which was more of a tactical puzzle roguelike rather than a deck builder, but it had some deck building element as well, because instead of playing cards to defeat the encounters, you were just moving your character around the map, defeating monsters, and had your own deck of helpful items that got shuffled in with the monsters and laid out on a grid. You had a choice of various different characters. Each of them had different abilities to overcome the adversity. The runs also had a map you could explore and find new ways to improve your character build and strategy, similar to Binding of Isaac kind of roguelike. And he had a nice progression, procedurally generated levels that got to a certain point and then unlocked the optional challenges and the higher difficulties, which I did not really care about. And the experience was overly pleasant, but not too great. I mean, I enjoy doing the playthrough, but did not stay with the game any longer, because after I was done with it, I'm like, I don't want any more of this. So it was good for the 10 or so hours it took me to beat the base game. Also, some people might say that it wasn't balanced enough and some character was stronger than others, because having cards that gave you scaling benefits like permanent upgrades to your other cards were quite strong and made the game a lot easier than it would be otherwise. So pleasant game, but not good enough for me to reach the higher elite tiers. Next is a game called Star Vaders that upgrades the existing deck building formula about building your deck and playing cards by replacing the traditional encounters where you just deal damage to monsters by a tactical experience on a grid of tiles, which works kind of like the old Invaders game, hence the name Star Vaders, where the monsters move from up to down, and instead of having a health bar for your character, your health is lowered when the enemies reach the bottom rows. And normally I do not really like much tactical games where you move something on a where the spatial element is added to the mix, let's say it like that, because then it makes it too difficult to me to mentally grasp, and I play most of these games as a casual experience when I just want to unwind. But the Star Vaders game was not an issue whatsoever in this regard, and it was a smooth experience all the way to reaching the definite ending of the game, and then even more definite, more ultimate ending that was added later to the game in version 2.0. Otherwise, I finished the game with all the characters at the Apocalypse difficulty, which is the third most difficulty, that the final required to reach the definite ending and not the optional content. I have beaten it with all 12 characters, which was a different game with every one of them slightly. And I had a blast doing so. It totally belongs to the S tier. It's exactly how I think a game should be made in every possible regard, really. So deserves nothing less. And to the last, I have a game called Three Kingdoms: The Blood Moon, which doesn't really look very good on the images and videos, in my opinion. So I did not have too much great hopes for it. But when I played it, I found that it works indeed very well, and I was wrong about it. It is special in the genre in that it simplifies the energy mechanics when you normally have an allocated number of energy available to play your cards. But instead, in this game, there are three kinds of cards: attack cards, defense cards, and tactics. And on your turn, you are not allowed to play defense cards, can play any number of green cards, support cards, as you want, which do not have too much of a huge effects. And you're only ever able to play a single damaging offensive card. then your turn is over, the enemies will attack, and on every enemy attack you will be able to play one card, which can also either be defensive to shield you from some of the damage, or an attack card to make a counter attack, kill the enemy, and you won't get any damage. And the formula works really great, although I found that the deck building element is secondary to building good selection of items that give you passive abilities. I think those passive abilities are much more important to build a good character build enough to beat the game, beat the main boss. Also, the progression was really nice. The difficulties were unlockable separately for all 4 provided characters. I have beaten the easiest difficulty with all of them, which was really easy. Then I went to do all the difficulties with one of the characters, and reached the final difficulty, which also had the final boss not available in the other difficulties and the definite ending. And it wasn't too challenging. I could do all the difficulties in a reasonable time, and it was very delightful. The runs were varied enough, and it deserves the A tier. It wasn't quite good enough to make it to the S tier with the best games, but it was really good and recommended. So that's it for today's tier list. I will be posting it as a link to the video description, as well as the links to all the different mentioned games on the Steam store. And afterwards I will be monitoring quite closely how well the video performs, because I have a lot of ideas for different content like this, but I will not be doing it if no one's going to be watching, as I don't want to be the random guy who's talking to himself. So if you want, you can tell me to cover more roguelike games as a tier list like this, or I can make tier lists about different game genres, or even maybe about board games if there is an interest in that. And I can also be persuaded to make a full commented playthrough of a run in one of these roguelikes, because that's something that shouldn't take too long, and I think I'll have a lot to say, and you might experience this game from my point of view, which I think is unique enough compared to other players and reviewers that you can find on YouTube. So the possibilities are there. You just have to put something of yourself in it as well to say so. So I'll look forward to hearing from you, and bye for now. Thanks for watching.